welcome back to Dusty Book Sniffers, everybody. My name's Nicole, and today I'm here to talk about Gone with the Wind. Good morning or good evening, everybody, no matter where you're watching from. Thank you for taking some time out of your day and spending it with me while I prattle on about the books that I have read. So today, as I said, we are talking about Gone with the Wind, and I know it has been a hot minute since I've been on. Last month I got incredibly ill and I just didn't read anything, so I just thought I'd take some time, regroup and get back. I'm still having some coughing fits and whatnot, but I am a lot better. I have been really concentrating on my craft channel as well, and I'll link that up down below if you're interested to go and have a look at that. But yeah, so as I said, we are here to talk about Gone with the Wind, but I'm going to also talk about a few things that have been happening in the background. So grab yourself a cuppa. It's probably going to be a little bit of a lengthy one, and let's start talking about some books. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about is I'm super excited. I have actually surpassed my goal for this year, which was to read 110 books. Now, I am really surprised that at this stage of the game of this year that I have already surpassed that. I think I'm about to do 114 or 115 from memory. And as I said, I'm really surprised that I have managed to do that, because a lot of the books that I have read have been quite chunky books, such as Gone with the Wind. I've read some Wheel of Time. I've read some Robin Hobb, George Eliot, A Little Life by Hannah Hanagahara. I always trip up on her name. But yeah, so I have been really, really pleased with everything that has gone down as far as reading goes. August has been my worst month. Being sick, I just couldn't read. I'd pick up a book, I'd read a paragraph, and I'd be asleep for a couple of hours. So it was just pointless. So I just called it, and I just basically concentrated on my stitching if I did some, or for the 2 weeks that I was sick, I just slept a lot. I was exercising prior to that, and I haven't picked up my exercise since, because I've gone out a couple of times, but yeah, I just haven't felt up to it. I'm still a little bit short of breath, and yes, it is the COVID virus I am talking about. It was just not very, very nice, and it took about 3 weeks for my sense of taste and smell was okay, but it was a little bit sketchy. It came back okay, and it's probably been only in the last week that I've been able to taste everything properly. But I'm a lot better now, and I have been doing some reading. As I said, I did go past my 110th book, and that was pretty easy because I did have a lot of big books that I was still reading, and I only had a few chapters here and there to finish those off. So had I've been reading in August, I probably would have passed that goal back then, but it wasn't until I think last week I passed that. So as I said, today we are going to talk about Gone with the Wind. Now, I read this a couple of months ago and I finished it, I think it was the end of July I finished it, and I was going to talk about it in August, but things happened and it didn't happen. So I think the last video you seen from me may have been Frankenstein. I talked about that. So that was a great book, but Gone with the Wind, oh, what an epic book that is. All right, so let's talk about Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind was published in 1939. It's considered a modern classic. Most people say it's a love story. For me, it's a little bit more than a love story. It is more about a story of survival in the hardest of circumstances, and with underlying, that's sort of an underlying bit there, but the main focus is a love story between Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler. Now, I will say that I read this book back in 1989 or 1990, so quite some time ago. So that would be around 32 years ago now. So yeah, so basically, and I had forgotten a lot about this book, so I was reading, like, I knew who the main players were and all that sort of stuff. I knew what the book was about. I knew the time that it was set. Like, I remembered all that sort of stuff. But there was the little nuances of the book that I had forgotten about. The racism was one of them. I forgot how jarring it can actually be to read something like that, especially in today's society where we're brought up not to use that language at all. And so it was a little bit jarring at times. And but for the most part, it was like I wanted to push through and read the book again because it is considered a modern classic. Now, I do have some notes here, so from time to time I will look down. Now, I was doing this as a group read over on our Discord, and we were reading 100 pages a week. We spread it out over 11, 12 weeks. I think we spread it out over 12 weeks from memory. And I think it ended up going a little bit longer because a few of us ended up running behind, including myself. These chapters in this book are so lengthy and so wordy, but so necessary to get the whole feel of the book. Like, there's some parts that they probably could have left out and all the rest of it, but I don't think it would be the book that it's regarded today without all the descriptiveness and what she was talking about and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to get into the analytical side of it or the political side of it or anything like that. I'm just going to give you a take on how I felt about the book, and maybe it might encourage you to pick it up. So as I said, it's more than a love story. It's more about a survival story. And the pacing of the book was okay for the most part. There were some parts that, for some people, they would lose interest because, again, it is very wordy and it is very old language that, not old language, more jarring language that is used in it, in the description of people of colour and stuff like that. So, but overall, it's a fantastic read. Like, I did enjoy it. The last 10 chapters for me were the pinnacle part of the book. It really came together and I really couldn't put it down. Prior to those last 10 chapters, I could take or leave it. There's a fair few characters in the book as well, but the main one, there's 4 main ones in my opinion, and that is Scarlett O'Hara, Rhett Butler, Ashley, and Melanie. Can't think of their last name. What is their last name? Did I write that down? Probably not. No, I didn't write their last name down. But the main focus is on Scarlett, Rhett, Ashley, which is Scarlett's obsession, and Melanie, which is Scarlett begrudgingly comes together with, that she doesn't really like her and whatnot. Now, it's really hard to talk about a book like this without giving too much away. I'm going to endeavour to do that, and I'm just going to talk about my 4 individual characters that I really like. Now, as I said, there are other characters in there. They are secondary to Scarlett, and that is her mother and her father, her sisters, and obviously there's all the some of the slaves that are in it and stuff like that. So I'm not going to talk about the political side of it. I don't want to get into debates in the comments about it or anything like that, because this is not the channel that I want. Well, yes, obviously I'm going to talk about politics and some things in the future because of different books I read, but today I'm not going to get into this at all. So, as I said, I've got a few notes here. Excuse me. So, Scarlett is the main character. That's what it's about. We first meet her when she's 16, and we follow her up until she's about 26, 28, I think she is, by the end of the book. And so when we first meet her, she's 16 years old, and she's a teenager. And like most teenagers, she's extremely self-absorbed, and the world revolves around her. And we are introduced to Ashley, who she is infatuated with, is the word. Like, she is obsessed with this gentleman, and basically she finds out at the beginning of the book, we find out that she is not the one that's going to marry Ashley. It's actually going to be Melanie. So we end up with a love-hate relationship between the 2 female characters, and basically as the book progresses and stuff like that. So out of spite, she ends up marrying Melanie's brother. Is it brother or cousin? Because I've read this so long ago, so I can't remember who's who in the zoo. So basically, she ends up being her sister-in-law, and I believe it was her brother. And they went away to it's set around the Civil War, and he went away to war, and he ended up dying prior to the war anyway. And Scarlett ended up being a widow and with a child as well. So yeah, so she has got some questionable qualities about her, this girl. So I've written a couple of them down. I'll start off with what I liked about her. I loved that she had, as the book progressed, she became a strong, independent woman, striving to survive, and she had that really staunch quality about her, and that she liked to break the rules and stuff like that. So it was really good to read her journey through that. It's from 16 through to 26, 28, I think she is in the final chapters. And yeah, so it was really good to read her essentially coming of age and learning to navigate her way through the world, and at a time when it was quite horrific for everybody involved. War is never good for anybody. So it was quite interesting to see some of her thought processes and stuff like that. What I didn't like about her is that she was going to do things, damn the consequences, and whoever was standing in her way, she was going to mow over the top. That was one of the things I didn't like about her. But then again, I don't like that about anybody, so I'm not going to like reading about it. But it was very necessary for the book because it just painted her picture. So that's what I really liked about her. And she goes through some stuff, and I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but if you like reading about a young girl coming of age, but pretty much on her own and trying to find and navigate her way through a very horrific time, you'll like this book. Now, in comes Rhett Butler. He weaves his way in. He's in the beginning of the book, and he hears a conversation between Scarlett and Ashley, and realizes that he can play some games with Scarlett. So he's a little bit of a player, a little bit morally grey. He's an opportunist. He has all the qualities that most people don't like in people, but it just works for this character. And he is infatuated with Scarlett in a way, and he really wants to be with her, but is reluctant to be with her, if that makes sense. That's the feeling that I got from the book anyway. And so there's a little bit of a cat and mouse game going on throughout the book with those two, and the way they banter with one another and how they feed off one another is quite interesting to read. But as I said, he is pretty morally grey. He is an opportunist. And sometimes you will just want to hate him, but then other times you think, you know what, he's actually right. And so there was a bit of that, a little bit of toing and froing between the characters and stuff like that. And it really did, I enjoyed that part of the book. I really did enjoy that part. The other character that I'm going to talk about, and like really, Scarlett and Rhett are the same, but one's female, one's male, and they're very much the same. They very much have the same sort of ideas about life and rule breaking, and because Rhett Butler's an outcast from his family and all that sort of stuff. So, and so they are very much suited. If only Scarlett would see it and she wasn't so infatuated with Ashley. And really, Rhett could have been older than her. I think he was 10, maybe a bit more years older than her. Being a bit older than her, maybe he could have moved this story along a little bit better by being a little bit more forthcoming with her instead of doing the cat and mouse thing. So my favourite character of the book, and I don't have much to say about her that is in the negative, is Melanie. Now, Melanie is essentially Scarlett's complete opposite. So she is caring, she is loving, she is empathetic, she is all the things that you would want in a person, as a friend, as a confidant, as a sister, all that sort of stuff. And she always sees the good in people, and sometimes the only thing I will say, sometimes a little bit too much of the good in people, but I feel that she was very much Scarlett's guiding light in some ways. And even though they had that, like, Scarlett hated Melanie because she was married to Ashley, but at the same time, I don't think Scarlett realised how much she actually needed and loved Melanie, because there were things that Scarlett did to almost the detriment of herself to help Melanie and to save her, and all of that sort of stuff. And it is something I akin to being best friends and sisters and stuff like that. So she, I feel, was the strong character, the strong female caring character of the book. And as I said, she is the main character, because a lot of the book does revolve around Scarlett and Melanie's relationship, the love-hate relationship. Melanie loves Scarlett and Scarlett hates. When I say love-hate, it's not on both parts, but Scarlett hates, and she uses the word hates, dislikes, thinks of, just dumping her and not looking after her or anything like that, because she's married to Ashley. Now, Ashley, for me, is the weakest character of the book. Like, he was just, to me, I know he was Scarlett's obsession and he was part of the book and he had to be part of the book for her to have that obsession, but he didn't really do anything. He went off to war and that was about it. He was at war. So it was really, his name was mentioned a lot, but it was only because Scarlett or Melanie were thinking of him, and stuff like that. He was in the book for a little bit at the beginning, then he went away, and then he was in the book at the end, but he just he seemed like he was really depressed. Like, just his narrative come across like he was really depressed. He was incredibly lost because he didn't know what to do with himself. And there was a passage, and it won't be word for word, but it alluded to the fact that he was bred for sitting around talking and reading, and that was all that his lot in life was going to be. And so that is sort of how he was portrayed throughout the book. So even though he went away to war and and all the rest of it, he didn't do much in the book. So he was just there not as fluff. He was there to demonstrate the obsession that Scarlett had with him, and also to set up the love-hate relationship between Melanie and Scarlett. And so Rhett really didn't rate him either, and he was trying to make, throughout the book, he was trying to make Scarlett see that, and she was pretty blind to the fact that he was not for her. And I'm going to give it away what happens in the end. You'll have to read it to find out. There is, now, the reason why we had it go for 12 weeks, or 11, 12 weeks, is because every edition that people had, because there was a whole heap of us reading it, every edition had a different amount of pages. So I got mine on Kindle, and mine had 1,184 pages in it. And then others had like 1,400 pages in it. Some had 1,300 pages. So it just depended. It depended on what book that you had, whether you had the physical, the Kindle, or where you got it from. So in conclusion for the book, I would say it's not a page turner. There are some parts that are more exciting than others. For the most part, it is a lot of Scarlett, Melanie, especially during those war times and coming to the conclusion of the war. It is very incredibly racist and is going to probably jar a lot of people, especially if you haven't read something like that before. It is quite jarring. And as I said, it's not a page turner. The last 10 chapters, I flew through those. I really couldn't put it down. And that was because Margaret Mitchell, just the way she wrote the book, she was really wrapping it up. And like the last 10 chapters, that was like a good 300 or 400 pages. Like, the chapters are not like a short chapters. It's not a couple of pages and then you're into a new chapter. They are pages and pages. In some cases they can be 50 to 60 pages per chapter. So it is a very wordy book, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad that I've reread it. As I said, I did miss a lot of the stuff, and you know what, a life experience has helped me understand it a little bit more as well, because really at 20 years old, did I have the understanding of the book? I don't think I did. But now that I've reread it, I have a lot of better understanding of the book, and I don't think I'll ever read it again. And there is a second part to it, and then there are some spin-offs of it about Scarlett's mammy is what they called her. I think she called her. So basically there are spin-offs of it. Am I going to read them? I'm not too sure. I have put them on to look at, and maybe look at them down the track, but they weren't written by the same author, but they are follow-ons from it. The Scarlett book that came out after Gone with the Wind, I'm not sure when that came out. The person that was a lady, I can't remember who wrote that. Whoever wrote that actually had permission from the Margaret Mitchell family to write that. So it is inspired by the first book, and they've sort of written a conclusion, because it does, the book, I felt, did have the, maybe not as long, but it did have the capacity to go longer, or to basically have a second book come out. So yeah, there wasn't that as if everything was left up in the air, but it had the potential to do that, and obviously that didn't happen, so this other author has actually done that. But that is it from me today. You will now start to see some videos on, of course, I'm in a different spot. It's very early in the morning here, and everybody is out of the house at the moment, so I thought I'd jump on and do some recording, because we're in the middle of school holidays as well. So it makes it very hard when Savannah's home, because she's right there, and I can't really record very much when she's home and people are in and out. But that's it from me today. I'm glad to be back. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Dusty Book Sniffers. If you haven't yet, like the video, hit the subscribe button, do all the things, share across the social medias, and I will catch you all again next time. Bye for now.